After working as a hospital cleaner for 25 years, I finally saved enough money to put my son Michael through an Ivy League university. I was diagnosed with severe arthritis in both knees and needed surgery that would keep me bedridden for months. I wanted to surprise him with a brand new car as a graduation gift, but then I accidentally overheard a conversation between Michael and his doctor that shattered my world. My name is Elena Rodriguez. At 47, the lines on my face told the story of countless nights spent scrubbing hospital floors while others slept. My hands, once soft and delicate, now bore the calluses of someone who had worked tirelessly with industrial cleaning agents. But every ache in my body was worth it for Michael. I adopted Michael when he was just 4 years old. His biological parents had abandoned him at the hospital where I worked, and something about his wide, innocent eyes called to me. The social worker warned me that raising a child on a cleaner's salary would be nearly impossible, but I was determined to prove her wrong. For 20 years, I worked double shifts, sometimes triple when overtime was available. I moved us into a tiny one-bedroom apartment in a rough neighborhood to save on rent. I mended the same uniforms year after year, ate the simplest meals, and put aside every extra penny for Michael's education fund. When Michael was accepted to Princeton with a partial scholarship, I cried tears of joy. My sacrifices had paid off. I took on even more work to cover the remaining tuition, often sleeping just 4 hours a night. Sometimes I would catch Michael looking at me with what I thought was appreciation, but there was something else in his eyes I couldn't quite identify. 3 months before his graduation, I was diagnosed with severe arthritis that required immediate surgery. The doctor said the years of kneeling to clean floors had destroyed my knee cartilage. The recovery would be lengthy and painful, but I kept smiling for Michael. I had saved enough for one final gift, a car to help him start his new life after graduation. "Mom, it's just a small procedure. You'll be fine," Michael reassured me before heading back to campus for his final semester. I watched him drive away in the used car I had bought him years ago, wondering if he knew just how much I loved him. Little did I know that the surgery would reveal not just the damage to my knees, but the true damage to my relationship with my son. The surgery went well, but the recovery was more painful than anticipated. I was transferred to a rehabilitation center where I would spend at least 2 months learning to walk properly again. During my 3rd week there, Michael came to visit with his girlfriend, Vanessa. "How are you feeling, Mom?" he asked, placing a small fruit basket on the nightstand. Vanessa stood awkwardly by the door, her designer handbag clutched tightly against her chest, as if afraid it might catch something from the rehabilitation center's air. "I'm getting better every day," I smiled, noticing how Michael seemed distracted, checking his watch repeatedly. "The doctor says I should be able to attend your graduation ceremony if I stick to my physical therapy." An odd expression passed over Michael's face. "About that, it might be better if you just focus on your recovery. The ceremony will be long, and with your condition." Before I could respond, Michael's phone rang. He excused himself and stepped into the hallway. Through the partially open door, I could hear his conversation with someone on the other end. "Dr. Palmer, yes, it's Michael. About my mother's condition." His voice lowered, but I could still make out the words. "Is there any way her recovery might take longer? The graduation is in 6 weeks, and honestly, it would be easier if she couldn't attend." I froze, my heart pounding painfully against my ribs. "Look, I know how this sounds," Michael continued, "but Vanessa's parents are flying in from Europe. Her father is the CEO of a major investment firm, the same one I'm hoping to work for. Having them meet my mother, a hospital cleaner, you understand the impression it would make." Dr. Palmer must have said something disapproving because Michael's voice became defensive. "I'm not ashamed of her. It's just complicated. Leslie, my birth mother, will be there. She's a professor at Columbia now, and I've been reconnecting with her. Having both mothers there would create unnecessary drama." I sat motionless on my bed, a cold numbness spreading through me. The son I had raised for 20 years, the one I had sacrificed everything for, was ashamed of me. He was trying to manipulate my doctor to keep me away from his graduation. one of the proudest moments I had worked for all my life. When Michael returned to the room, I pretended to be asleep. I couldn't bear to look at him, knowing what I now knew. After they left, I quietly wept into my pillow, the pain in my heart far worse than the pain in my knees. That night, I made a decision. I would not confront Michael immediately. Instead, I would double my efforts in physical therapy and see just how far my son's betrayal went. The next day, I asked one of the nurses I had befriended during my years at the hospital to bring me my laptop. With shaking hands, I logged into Michael's social media accounts. I knew his passwords because I had helped him set them up years ago, and he had never changed them, perhaps never imagining his cleaner mother would have reason to check. What I found turned my stomach. There were dozens of messages between Michael and Vanessa discussing me as a problem to be managed before graduation. My adoptive mom thinks she's coming to graduation, he had written just 2 weeks earlier. Can you imagine her sitting next to your parents in her discount store clothes? Your dad would never take me seriously. Vanessa had replied, can't you just tell her it's graduates only or something? Or maybe the doctor could say she's not ready for that much physical activity. I scrolled further and discovered messages between Michael and someone named Leslie Gardner, his birth mother. She was indeed a professor at Columbia University, and according to their exchanges, they had been in contact for over 2 years without my knowledge. I'm so looking forward to finally celebrating a milestone with my son, Leslie had written. It's been too many years lost. Michael's response cut through me like a knife. It'll be perfect. Elena won't be there. Her surgery came at just the right time. You'll finally get to be the mother at my graduation, and no one will have to know about my background. My hands trembled as I clicked through photos of Michael and Leslie having dinners at expensive restaurants, attending academic events, and posing with what appeared to be her academic colleagues, all while I was working night shifts to pay for his education. I found a message to Dr. Palmer sent after our last appointment. Thanks for understanding my situation, Doctor. Palmer, if you could just recommend that Elena focus on her recovery instead of attending the ceremony, I'd really appreciate it. The social dynamics would be uncomfortable for everyone involved. Dr. Palmer's response was professional but cold. I will only make medical recommendations based on your mother's actual condition, Michael. Her recovery is progressing well, and I see no medical reason she couldn't attend with proper accommodations. I closed the laptop, a strange calm settling over me. The depth of Michael's betrayal was greater than I had imagined. This wasn't just about being embarrassed by me at graduation. He had been systematically erasing me from his life, replacing me with the mother who had abandoned him, all while I continued to sacrifice everything for his future. That evening, when my physical therapist came, I asked her to push me harder than ever before. I have somewhere important to be in 6 weeks, I told her, and nothing is going to stop me from being there. With newfound determination, I began digging deeper. I asked Maria, my former colleague from the hospital who now worked in medical records, to help me find information about Leslie Gardner. What I discovered left me breathless. 20 years ago, Leslie hadn't simply abandoned Michael. She had been a young medical student who had gotten pregnant during an affair with one of her married professors. When the scandal threatened to derail her career, she left her 4-year-old son at the hospital with a note saying she couldn't care for him. That professor was now the dean of medicine at Princeton, the very university Michael attended on a merit-based scholarship. I recalled how mysteriously Michael had received his partial scholarship despite his good but not exceptional grades. Everything was starting to make horrifying sense. I found emails between Leslie and the dean, Harold Whitman, discussing Michael's admission to Princeton years ago. Our son deserves this opportunity, she had written. After all these years of secrecy, it's the least you can do. Through social media, I discovered that Vanessa's father's investment firm had recently established a major endowment at Princeton, and that Leslie Gardner now sat on an advisory board with him. Michael's entire world, his education, his future career, his social connections, had been carefully orchestrated by people who had abandoned him when he was most vulnerable. Meanwhile, I found messages between Michael and his friends discussing his background story for Vanessa's parents. "They think my mom is a professor on sabbatical," he wrote. "Leslie has agreed to play along. No one needs to know about the cleaner who raised me." I sat back in my hospital bed, stunned by the elaborate web of lies. The son I had known, or thought I had known, was living a double life. He was ashamed of his upbringing, ashamed of me, and willing to erase 20 years of love and sacrifice to climb a social ladder. Maria brought me one final piece of information. Leslie Gardner was scheduled to give a prestigious speech at Princeton the day before graduation. The topic? Family values in modern society. The irony would have made me laugh if it hadn't hurt so much. I looked at my bank statement, at the savings account I had been building for 25 years. It contained enough for Michael's new car, plus a small nest egg I had hoped to use for retirement. Now I wondered if any of my sacrifices had meant anything at all. That night, I made a phone call to an old friend who worked as a journalist. "Sophia," I said quietly, "I have a story you might be interested in. But first, I need to get well enough to attend a graduation ceremony." For the next 4 weeks, I transformed myself. I approached my recovery with military precision, following every exercise the physical therapist prescribed and adding my own regimen during evenings. The pain was excruciating, but I pushed through it, visualizing myself standing tall at that graduation ceremony. Michael visited only twice during this period, each time making excuses about his busy schedule. During these visits, I played the role of the naive, loving mother perfectly. I listened to his lies about how disappointed he was that I might not make it to graduation, and I pretended to believe him. "Don't worry about me, sweetheart," I said, masking my pain as I slowly demonstrated my still limited mobility. "Your education has always been my priority. You focus on your big day." Meanwhile, I was making plans of my own. I contacted the University Disability Services office directly, arranging accommodations for the ceremony without Michael's knowledge. I spoke with Sophia, who had begun investigating the connections between Leslie Gardner, Dean Whitman, and the suspicious scholarship Michael had received. I also withdrew the money I had saved for Michael's new car, and instead invested it in myself. I hired a personal stylist who came to the rehabilitation center with clothing options for a woman attending an Ivy League graduation. I booked appointments with a high-end salon and a makeup artist for the day before the ceremony. "You don't look like someone recovering from major surgery," my physical therapist remarked during our final session. "You look like someone preparing for battle." I smiled. Sometimes they're the same thing. Michael called me the week before graduation, his voice carefully modulated to sound concerned yet resigned. "Mom, I've been talking with Dr. Palmer. He thinks it's best if you don't push yourself to attend the ceremony. The venue isn't very accessible and it will be a long day." "I understand, Michael," I replied, hearing the relief in his sigh. "Your graduation is important, but my health comes first." "Exactly," he said too quickly. "I'll record everything for you, I promise." After hanging up, I received a text from Sophia. "Everything is in place. Leslie Gardner's speech has been approved for the ceremony. Dean Whitman will be seated on stage. Vanessa's parents are hosting a post-graduation reception for select students and faculty." I looked at myself in the mirror, at the woman who had spent 25 years cleaning other people's messes. It was time for me to clean up one final mess, but this time I wouldn't be using a mop and bucket. This time, I would be using the truth. 1 week, I whispered to my reflection. 1 week until graduation day. The day before graduation, I checked myself out of the rehabilitation center against medical advice. Dr. Palmer frowned but couldn't legally stop me. "Elena, you've made remarkable progress, but you're not fully healed," he warned. "At least use a wheelchair for long distances." I nodded, accepting the wheelchair he offered, but knowing I would only use it if absolutely necessary. My plan required me to stand tall, at least for a few crucial moments. Sophia picked me up and drove me to a hotel near Princeton's campus. From our window, we could see the main quad where workers were setting up chairs for tomorrow's ceremony. Sophia handed me a press pass. "This will get you into Leslie Gardner's speech this evening," she explained. "Are you sure you want to do this? You could just confront Michael privately." I shook my head. He's been living two lives for years. It's time for both worlds to meet. That evening, I rolled my wheelchair into the back of the lecture hall where Leslie Gardner was scheduled to speak. The room was filled with faculty, graduating students, and their parents. The elite academic circle that Michael so desperately wanted to join. I spotted Michael immediately, sitting in the front row beside Vanessa and an elegant couple who must be her parents. A distinguished older man, Dean Whitman, I presumed, sat on the stage, his face a mask of academic dignity. Leslie Gardner stepped to the podium, her confident smile revealing perfect teeth. Her designer suit and carefully styled hair projected success and sophistication. She began speaking about family values, commitment, and the sacrifices parents make for their children's futures. Every word from her mouth felt like a mockery of my life. "The true measure of parental love," she said, looking directly at Michael, "is the willingness to put your child's future above your own comfort and desires." I watched Michael nodding in agreement, beaming with pride at the woman who had abandoned him. The same woman who was now using their reunited relationship to bolster her academic reputation as a family expert. During the reception afterward, I stayed hidden, observing from a distance as Michael introduced Leslie to Vanessa's parents as my mother. The word stung, but I remained composed. "She's a professor at Columbia," I heard him explain proudly. "Her work on family dynamics is groundbreaking." Vanessa's father seemed impressed, shaking Leslie's hand warmly while discussing potential collaborations between his firm and her department. The perfect networking opportunity, exactly as Michael had planned. As they left the reception, I overheard Vanessa asking, "What about your other mom? The one who raised you?" Michael's response was dismissive. "She's just someone who took me in. Tomorrow is about my real family." His words confirmed everything I needed to know. I returned to the hotel, my heart heavy but my resolve stronger than ever. Tomorrow would be the day of reckoning. "Everything is set for tomorrow," Sophia confirmed. "My photographer will be positioned near the stage, and I've confirmed our information about the scholarship with 3 separate sources." I looked at my reflection in the hotel mirror, hardly recognizing the stylish, determined woman looking back at me. "Tomorrow," I whispered. "The truth graduates." The morning of graduation dawned bright and clear. I dressed carefully in the outfit my stylist had selected, an elegant navy blue dress that exuded quiet dignity. The salon had transformed my usually practical, work-worn appearance into something softer yet more commanding. For perhaps the first time in 25 years, I had invested in how I looked, not for Michael's sake, but for my own. 2 hours before the ceremony, I made my way to the university administration building. I had arranged a meeting with the president of Princeton, Dr. Eleanor Hargrove, who had been surprisingly receptive to my request after Sophia had mentioned certain irregularities in scholarship allocations. Dr. Hargrove was a stern-looking woman in her 60s, with penetrating eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they saw. She welcomed me into her office with professional courtesy. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I understand you have concerns about your son's scholarship and certain faculty relationships," she said, motioning for me to sit. I handed her a folder containing everything Sophia and I had gathered. Emails between Leslie and Dean Whitman discussing Michael's admission, the timeline of their renewed relationship, and evidence of the preferential treatment Michael had received. "My son earned his place here through hard work," I said firmly. "But these documents suggest his biological parents arranged advantages that other students didn't have access to." Dr. Hargrove reviewed the documents, her expression growing increasingly grave. "This is deeply concerning, Mrs. Rodriguez. Academic integrity is our highest priority." "I'm not here to destroy my son's graduation day," I clarified. "I simply want the truth acknowledged." As we discussed next steps, the door to Dr. Hargrove's office suddenly opened. Dean Whitman walked in, stopping short when he saw me. "Eleanor, we need to discuss the seating arrangements for—" He froze mid-sentence, his eyes darting between the president and me. "Harold, this is Elena Rodriguez," Dr. Hargrove said evenly. "Michael Rodriguez's mother." The color drained from Whitman's face. "I wasn't aware Michael's guardian would be attending today." "Mother," I corrected him firmly. "I'm his mother, the one who raised him for 20 years while you and Leslie Gardner built your careers." Whitman's expression hardened. "Mrs. Rodriguez, whatever you think you know—" "Harold," Dr. Hargrove interrupted, holding up the folder. "We have a situation that requires immediate attention. Mrs. Rodriguez has provided documentation suggesting improper influence in admissions and scholarship allocations." The confrontation that followed was brief but intense. Whitman initially tried to dismiss the allegations, then attempted to minimize his relationship with Leslie and Michael. Finally, when Dr. Hargrove mentioned the university's ethics committee, he resorted to thinly veiled threats about donor relationships. Through it all, I remained calm, my decades of dealing with difficult hospital administrators serving me well. When Whitman finally stormed out, Dr. Hargrove turned to me with newfound respect. "That took courage, Mrs. Rodriguez. What exactly do you want to happen today?" I smiled sadly. "I want my son to graduate with his class. I want to be recognized as his mother. And I want the truth to be acknowledged, not to punish him, but because living a lie has never served anyone well." Dr. Hargrove nodded thoughtfully. "I believe we can arrange that." As I left her office, I received a text from Michael. "Where are you? I thought you were staying at the rehab center." I didn't respond. The time for texts and explanations was past. The next time Michael saw me would be at his graduation ceremony, where all the carefully separated worlds he had created would finally collide. The Princeton graduation ceremony was a sea of black gowns and orange and black tassels. Thousands of folding chairs filled the main quadrangle, with a large stage erected at one end. Families chatted excitedly, taking photos and waving to their graduating seniors as they processed in. I sat in a special reserved section near the front, arranged by Dr. Hargrove. From my position, I could see Michael in the procession, scanning the crowd anxiously. His eyes passed over me without recognition. The new hairstyle and clothing had transformed me from the cleaner mother he was accustomed to seeing. In the family seating area, I spotted Leslie Gardner sitting with Vanessa's parents, all of them dressed impeccably. Leslie was smiling broadly, playing the role of the proud mother perfectly. Dean Whitman sat stiffly on stage, his usual confidence noticeably diminished after our confrontation. The ceremony began with the traditional procession and speeches. Dr. Hargrove's opening remarks included a pointed section about integrity and honesty that caused Dean Whitman to shift uncomfortably in his seat. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. "Before we begin conferring degrees," Dr. Hargrove announced, "we have a special presentation. The university wishes to recognize an extraordinary parent whose sacrifices have embodied the true spirit of devotion to education." A murmur went through the crowd as Dr. Hargrove continued. "For 25 years, this parent worked as a hospital cleaner, often taking double and triple shifts to save for their child's education. Despite having no college education themselves, they instilled a love of learning that resulted in their child's admission to Princeton. Would Elena Rodriguez please join me on stage?" A spotlight found me as I stood, using my cane but walking proudly toward the stage. The crowd applauded, though they had no idea of the drama unfolding. From the corner of my eye, I saw Michael's face transform from confusion to shock to horror as he finally recognized me. Leslie Gardner had gone pale, and Dean Whitman looked like he might be ill. Dr. Hargrove presented me with a certificate of recognition, then handed me the microphone. The quadrangle fell silent. "Thank you for this honor," I said, my voice steady. "I'm here today to celebrate my son Michael's graduation, the culmination of both his hard work and my life's purpose." I looked directly at Michael in the graduating section. I adopted Michael when he was 4 years old after his biological parents decided their careers were more important than raising a child. Gasps rippled through the audience. Leslie Gardner seemed to shrink in her seat. For 20 years, I cleaned hospital floors and bathrooms to put food on our table and money in his college fund. I'm not ashamed of being a cleaner. Honest work is never shameful. What is shameful is pretending to be something you're not. I turned slightly toward Dean Whitman. Princeton is an institution built on integrity and excellence. When those values are compromised by secret arrangements and preferential treatment, everyone suffers, especially the students who believe that merit alone determined their path. The silence was absolute now. Everyone in the quadrangle seemed to be holding their breath. I'm proud of my son's academic achievements, I continued. But I'm here today, not just as Michael's mother, but as someone who believes that truth matters. Michael, congratulations on your graduation. The car keys I promised you are with Dr. Hargrove. But more important than any material gift is the legacy of honesty I hope you'll embrace going forward. With that, I returned to my seat, the crowd erupting in applause, not fully understanding what had transpired, but moved by the obvious emotion of the moment. As the ceremony continued and names were called, I watched Michael walk across the stage in a daze, accepting his diploma mechanically. Our eyes met briefly, and in that moment, I saw something I hadn't seen in years, recognition of who I truly was, and perhaps the beginning of shame for how he had treated me. The formal ceremony ended with the traditional hat toss, but the real drama was just beginning. As families searched for their graduates in the crowd, I remained seated, watching the chaos unfold from a distance. Michael stood frozen at the edge of the quad, his diploma clutched in one hand while Vanessa gesticulated wildly beside him. Her parents hovered nearby, their expressions a mixture of confusion and distaste. Leslie Gardner was attempting to approach them, but Vanessa's father was clearly rebuffing her advances. Sophia appeared at my side, press badge prominently displayed. "My photographer got everything," she whispered, "and the story goes live in 5 minutes." As if on cue, phones throughout the crowd began to chime with news alerts. Sophia's investigation into the scholarship irregularities and the relationship between Dean Whitman and Leslie Gardner had been published, complete with documentation and quotes from anonymous university sources. People began reading the article on their phones, their expressions changing to shock and disbelief. Heads turned to stare at Dean Whitman, who was attempting to leave the stage discreetly. Dr. Hargrove intercepted him, her expression making it clear that a conversation was unavoidable. Michael finally spotted me and began making his way through the crowd, his face a storm of emotions. Vanessa tried to hold him back, but he shook off her hand. "Mom," he said when he reached me, his voice barely audible over the crowd. "What have you done?" "I've told the truth, Michael," I replied calmly. "Something you should have done years ago." "You've ruined everything," he hissed, glancing back at Vanessa's parents, who were now speaking with a university administrator. "My job offer, my relationship, my reputation. I gave you an education, Michael. I gave you opportunities. I gave you love. What you built with those gifts was your choice. If your entire future was built on lies, that's not my doing." A university security officer approached us. "Mrs. Rodriguez, Dr. Hargrove would like to speak with you and your son in her office, privately." The meeting that followed was one of the most difficult hours of my life. Dr. Hargrove had assembled Dean Whitman, Leslie Gardner, and a university legal counsel. The evidence of impropriety was laid bare. The scholarship that had been diverted from more qualified candidates, the academic opportunities arranged through Leslie's influence, the deception that had been perpetuated about Michael's background. "The university takes these matters extremely seriously," Dr. Hargrove stated. "While we will not revoke Michael's degree, as his academic work itself appears to be legitimate, there will be consequences for the ethical breaches that occurred." Dean Whitman was placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. Leslie Gardner's guest faculty status was revoked, and Michael sat through it all, watching his carefully constructed future crumble. "I didn't know," he kept insisting, looking between his biological parents. "I didn't know about the scholarship arrangements." "But you did know who raised you," I said quietly. You did know whose sacrifices paid for your education before the scholarship, and you chose to be ashamed of that. Leslie Gardner finally spoke up, her academic Polish cracking. Michael came to me. He found me. He wanted a mother he could be proud of. Someone who could help his career. What was I supposed to do? Be honest, I replied. Tell him that abandoning your child is not something you can rectify with networking opportunities 20 years later. As we left Dr. Hargrove's office, Michael checked his phone and his face fell. Vanessa texted me. Her father rescinded the job offer. In the span of a few hours, the carefully constructed facade of Michael's life had collapsed entirely. Standing in the administrative building hallway, Michael looked at me with tears in his eyes. Why did you do this today of all days? You could have confronted me privately. The same reason you wanted me absent today of all days, I answered gently, because some moments define who we truly are. 3 days after the graduation ceremony, I met with my financial advisor in his modest office downtown. The fallout from my public revelation was still reverberating through Princeton's campus and beyond. Sophia's article had been picked up by national news outlets, sparking debates about privilege in elite universities and the sacrifices of working-class parents. Elena, my advisor said, reviewing my accounts, you've worked incredibly hard to build these savings. Are you absolutely certain about this decision? I nodded firmly. I've spent 25 years cleaning other people's spaces. Now it's time to create my own. With that, I signed the papers transferring my savings, minus the money I had already spent on my medical care, into a new investment account. The funds I had saved for Michael's car and future support would now be used to secure my own future. That afternoon, I received a visit from Vanessa at my hotel room. Her usual confidence was gone, replaced by a nervous energy as she perched on the edge of a chair. Mrs. Rodriguez, she began, I want to apologize for my role in all this. I didn't understand the full situation. I studied her carefully. Did you come because you want something, Vanessa? She flushed. Michael's in trouble. Without the job at my father's firm, he has no prospects. His connection to the scandal has made him toxic to employers. He's been calling me, begging for help. And what do you expect me to do? Maybe you could help him financially? Just until he finds his footing? Her eyes drifted to my new clothes, my styled hair. You obviously have resources. I couldn't help but laugh, though there was no joy in it. Vanessa, a week ago you couldn't bear to be in the same room with me because I was a cleaner. Now you want me to use my cleaner's savings to support the son who rejected me? Her face hardened. He's still your son. Yes, he is, I agreed. And he needs to learn that actions have consequences. Michael is well-educated, healthy, and young. He has advantages many people never receive. He'll find his way without my money. After Vanessa left, I received a call from Dr. Hargrove. The university was establishing a new scholarship for children of service workers, inspired by my story. They wanted to name it after me. Your courage has forced our institution to confront some uncomfortable truths, she said. We'd be honored if you would speak at the scholarship launch. That evening, Michael himself finally appeared at my door. Gone was the confident Ivy League graduate, replaced by a young man with red-rimmed eyes and a haunted expression. Mom, he said, his voice breaking, I've lost everything. I let him in but remained standing, my knees still painful after the long day. Not everything, Michael. You have your education, your health, and your whole life ahead of you. Vanessa left me, he continued as if he hadn't heard me. Leslie won't return my calls. No one will hire me. He looked up, desperation in his eyes. I need your help. What kind of help, Michael? Financial help? The kind you were happy to take while keeping me hidden away? Or do you need a mother now? He flinched at my words. Both, I guess. I shook my head slowly. I will always be your mother, Michael. That hasn't changed. But the financial support ends now. You're a grown man with advantages many never receive. It's time you built your life on truth rather than convenience. Where am I supposed to go? He asked, suddenly looking very young. That's for you to decide. But whatever you choose, make sure it's something you won't be ashamed of later. As Michael left, I felt a strange mixture of pain and liberation. For the first time in 25 years, I had chosen myself. The road ahead would be difficult for both of us, but it would be honest. 6 months passed. I used my savings to open a small cleaning company, employing other single parents and providing them with fair wages and flexible schedules. The work was familiar, but different now that I was the owner rather than the employee. My knees still ached on rainy days, but the surgery had been successful enough to allow me a new level of mobility. Michael's fall from grace had been swift and complete. The scandal at Princeton had made headlines for weeks, with Dean Whitman eventually resigning and Leslie Gardner facing an ethics investigation at Columbia. Vanessa had become engaged to another Princeton graduate, someone with cleaner connections to her father's firm. I had maintained minimal contact with Michael, checking that he was safe but refusing to rescue him financially. He had found a job as an administrative assistant at a small community college, a far cry from the prestigious investment banking position he had anticipated, but honest work. One Sunday afternoon, I received an unexpected visit from Michael. He looked different, thinner, less polished, but somehow more substantial. "Mom," he said when I opened the door, "I wanted to come by, to talk." I invited him in, noting how his eyes took in my new apartment, modest but comfortable, with photographs of my cleaning company staff prominently displayed. "You've been busy," he observed, gesturing to the photos. "Yes," I replied. "Life doesn't stop, even after public scandals." Michael winced but nodded. I deserved that. We sat in my small living room, the silence between us heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Michael took a deep breath. "I've been doing a lot of thinking these past months," he began, his voice quieter than I remembered. "About the kind of person I became, the choices I made. I convinced myself that status and appearance were more important than truth or loyalty. I was wrong." I remained silent, giving him space to continue. "The job at the community college has been eye-opening," he continued. "I work with students who struggle to pay tuition, who work multiple jobs like you did. Some of them are single parents. They have a determination I never appreciated before." He looked down at his hands. "I've started a counseling program for first-generation college students. We help them navigate the system, apply for financial aid, understand the unwritten rules of academia. My boss says I have a knack for it." "That sounds worthwhile," I said, feeling a tentative pride. "It is," Michael agreed. "For the first time, I'm doing something I'm not ashamed of." He looked up, meeting my eyes directly. "Unlike how I treated you, Mom, I can never undo the hurt I caused. I betrayed the one person who never gave up on me, all for people who abandoned me when things got difficult." His voice broke, and I saw tears in his eyes. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. What you did at graduation, it was harsh, but it was necessary. You forced me to confront who I had become." I felt my own eyes filling with tears. "I never wanted to hurt you, Michael. I wanted you to be proud of your accomplishments without being ashamed of your roots." "Leslie called last week," he said quietly. "She wants to reconnect now that the media attention has died down. I told her I already have a mother." The simple statement hung in the air between us, more powerful than any elaborate apology. Michael continued, "The community college is starting a scholarship fund for children of maintenance workers. They asked if they could name it after you. I told them I'd ask." I smiled slightly. "They can name it after cleaners everywhere. We don't need my name on it." As Michael prepared to leave, he paused at the door. "The students I counsel, they often talk about feeling out of place, like they don't belong at college. I tell them about my mother who cleaned hospitals for 25 years so I could attend Princeton. I tell them that real dignity comes from hard work and honesty, not from pretending to be something you're not." He swallowed hard. "I hope that's okay." I nodded, unable to speak through the emotion tightening my throat. "I don't expect things to go back to how they were," Michael said, but I was hoping maybe we could have dinner sometime? Start rebuilding if you're willing." As he left, I sat in my quiet apartment, thinking about forgiveness and second chances. The pain of Michael's betrayal hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed into something different, a hard-earned wisdom that would shape both our lives going forward. The consequences of Michael's actions had been severe but necessary. In losing the false future he had constructed, he had found something more valuable: the truth about himself and the courage to build a life he wouldn't need to hide. 5 years later, I stood at the podium of the community college where Michael worked, addressing a room full of graduates and their families. My cleaning company had grown to employ over 50 people, mostly single parents and immigrants working to put their children through school. I had become an advocate for fair wages in the service industry, and my story had inspired similar programs at universities across the country. "The measure of your success," I told the graduates, "will never be found in the prestige of your job title or the size of your salary. It will be found in the integrity with which you live your life and the positive impact you have on others." From my position on stage, I could see Michael in the audience, sitting beside his new wife, Carmen, a counselor he had met at the college. Their 1-year-old daughter, named Elena after me, slept peacefully in her carrier. After my speech, we gathered for a family dinner at a local restaurant. Nothing fancy, but warm and welcoming. As I held my granddaughter, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. "You know," Michael said as we finished our meal, "I sometimes think about how different everything would have been if I hadn't been so ashamed of where I came from." "We can't change the past," I replied, "but we can learn from it." Michael nodded. "The scholarship program has helped 15 students graduate so far. 3 of them were children of cleaning staff. And how many of them were ashamed of their parents?" I asked with a small smile. "None," Michael answered confidently. "We make sure of that." Carmen chimed in. "Elena's going to grow up knowing exactly who her grandmother is and the incredible woman she was named after." Later that evening, as I prepared to leave, Michael walked me to my car. "Mom," he said suddenly, "do you remember what you told me that day in your apartment? About building a life I wouldn't be ashamed of?" I nodded. "I think about that every day," he continued. "It guides every decision I make, and I wanted you to know I'm proud of my life now. Not because it's impressive to others, but because it's honest." As I drove home to my comfortable condo, I thought about the hospital cleaner I had once been, the woman who had sacrificed everything for a son who had temporarily lost his way. I didn't regret those years of sacrifice, nor did I regret the moment of reckoning that had forced both Michael and me to confront uncomfortable truths. The painful journey had transformed us both. Michael had learned that true respect comes from authenticity, not pretense. And I had learned that loving someone doesn't mean erasing yourself. I had spent decades cleaning hospitals, making spaces safe and healthy for others. Now, in the second act of my life, I had finally created a clean, honest space for myself. The next morning, I woke early and went to my office. On my desk sat a framed photograph of Michael and me at his graduation. Not the original ceremony, but a small private celebration we had held a year later, after he had completed his counseling certification. In the photo, we were both smiling, not the polished, perfect smiles of people hiding their truth, but the genuine expressions of 2 people who had weathered a storm and emerged stronger. Beside it stood a simple plaque from the community college, the Cleaners Legacy Scholarship Fund. Some might have seen my confrontation with Michael at his graduation as an act of revenge, but it had never been about punishment. It had been about truth, the painful but necessary foundation upon which genuine relationships must be built. I had gone to my son's graduation not to shame him, but to remind him of who he truly was. Not the son of a prestigious professor, not the protege of a powerful dean, but the child of a cleaner who had loved him enough to give him both opportunity and honesty. In the end, that had been my greatest gift to him, greater than any car or house or education I could have provided. I had given him the chance to build a life of integrity, and in doing so, had finally claimed one for myself as well.